We got Sister McCoy and her family. They came all the way from Fresno. Raise your hand, sister. Yeah, they came all the way from Fresno, man. All praise the Most High, man. Beautiful to see the church going. We got the brother in the back. What's your name, King? Salaki. What's your name? Malani? Jelani, man. We got the brother Jelani. Yeah, clap it up for him, man. All praise the Most High, man. Then we got the brother Toy Washington, man. He came back with us, man. All praise, hey, good to see you again, King. We got my brother from another mother Baruch, aka Barack, and his family, man. All praise to the Most High, man. Beautiful thing, man. You know, we hope you guys have a beautiful, wonderful experience. We'll go ahead and try to give you guys the word of the Most High, of course, and hopefully you guys are satisfied with the Spirit.
All praises, man. It's a beautiful thing to see new people. It's a beautiful thing to have everybody in here and on a beautiful Sabbath. So today's lesson that I got is it's going to be titled Israelite Not African. Okay. Once again, that is Israelite Not African. So the reason I chose this lesson is because what? It's Black History Month, right? It's Black History Month. What do you even do on Black History Month? We don't do no. There ain't no celebrations or nothing.
They just go on the kente cloth.
The kente cloth, right? They put the dashiki on, right? So we're going to go into it a little bit. Israelite, not African. So we're going to cover a few things. You know, definitely want to take notes. I'm going to get some historical facts. I'm going to show you the difference between being an Israelite and what an African is. Because when you come into the truth and you start learning, you still might identify yourself with just being African. I mean, that's what the white man told us, right? He said, oh, you was African. You was hanging on them trees. You was swinging through the jungles, and I came to save you and brought you to America. That's what he said. So we're going to dive into it. Give me this one real quick. No, not yet. Give me Daniel chapter 9, verse 7. So the book of Daniel chapter 9, verse 7. If there's any questions or anything, please interrupt me. Ask your questions. Anybody new need clarification on anything, go ahead and ask your questions. It's a house of learning, so that's what we do. So give me Daniel chapter 9, verse 7 and 8.
God, this is the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 7. O Lord, righteousness belongs unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces.
So the scriptures say, O Lord, Most High, righteousness belongs to you, but to us confusion of faces. Now, what does that mean? We got a mic up there? We got a mic up there, right? Go ahead, Makazai, you got the mic. So what does it mean when the Most High say, or when we say to us confusion of faces? What does that mean?
We don't understand. We're lost.
Right.
We're just, senseless in a way.
Right. Exactly. So right now, it's a beautiful thing. People is coming into the truth. We learning our identity, but it's one thing you learn, but then there's an action behind it too. So right now we're learning who we are. So we're trying to get out of that confused state where we don't have an identity. What do they call us now, right? They call us African American. They call us Black. They call us Negro, Afro-Latin. What else? What? Nigga, whatever you want to call it. People of color, right? All of these different type of bywords and different identities that we have that don't really reflect from where we actually come from, right? When you look at the Asian man, you know that he comes from where? Asia, right? When you look at the Japanese man, you know he's gonna go back to Japan. The white man, what we say? He might go back to the caves, Caucasian, right? But then with us, what does the so-called Black man goes to? Where do we identify ourselves? Where is the homeland? So a lot of times we say African American or that we African. But then when you ask somebody that's from Africa, what do they say? They say, I'm from Kenya. They say, I'm from Ghana. They say, I'm Nigerian. But what do we say? We say, we African. So I'm going to bring clarity to exactly what it means to be African. I'm going to show you in history who were the Africans in the Bible. The Africans was talked about. I'm going to show you also the Israelites as well. So any type of questions, we're going to bring clarity to that. Go ahead and read that again.
From the top. Daniel chapter 9, verse 7. O Lord, righteousness belongs unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces. As at this day, the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem.
So you know who that is. Judah. That is a tribe, but it represents the southern kingdom. So Israel is a tribe. It has 12 tribes inside. 12 tribes. Judah represents the southern. And then you got Ephraim that represents Or right here, it says the inhabitants of Jerusalem is representing the northern kingdom, right? 12 in total. Go ahead.
And unto all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespasses that they have trespassed against thee.
So the Most High is saying, due to our sins and our transgressions, confusion of faces is a curse. Go ahead.
Verse 8, O Lord, to us belonging confusions of faces, to our kings.
What is your so-called black king? Who is our king? Who do we know as a black king today? Who is it? LeBron James?
Yeah.
Dr. Dre, since he was playing in the NFL or playing in the Super Bowl, right?
Oprah,
that's our kings, right? Kings and queens now. But the Most High says he's gonna give you a confusion of faces so you won't be able to identify your own kings. If you ask a kid in school, who is your king or who do you connect yourself with, they have no idea. When you were in school, what do they teach you? Do they teach you about any of your kings? So when we go to school, they teach us about Abraham Lincoln, George Washington. They teach us about all these different type of kings that they had, great men of their history. But what about ours? We say we from Africa. We say we was kings and queens, but show me some kings and queens, right? Show me exactly what they looked like. Show me exactly what did they do. Show me how they organized themselves and how they was. That's how you identify yourself. But we don't have that because the Most High said, I'll give you confusion of faces. Go ahead.
From the top, verse 8, O Lord, to us belonging confusions of faces, to our kings, to our princes, and to our fathers.
To our fathers. How many of us actually know who our fathers is? We don't know what our fathers look like. We don't know our father's father. We don't have any type of connection with our fathers anymore, for the most part, right? And that is a curse because you have no identity. So when you don't know exactly where you come from, what does that say? When you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going, right? So it is an identity, and it's a big thing. A lot of people feel like, oh, it's okay. It's not a bad thing that you don't know your parents. It's not a bad thing that you don't know your family. But it is because you don't have no history. See, as Rata, he did some beautiful lessons in the past talking about the characteristics that are inherited through your family. There's a lot of things that you might do, but you don't even understand why you're doing it because you don't have connection with your family. So it's a lot of things that we're going through, and this is a big curse. Go ahead.
Because we have sinned against thee. Verse 9, to the Lord our God belongeth mercies and forgiveness, though we have rebelled against him.
So we rebelled against him. Go ahead and drop that. Give me Job, chapter 9, verse 24. So confusion of faces. Confusion of faces. So we're going to give an explanation on why we love to identify ourselves with being African. Why is it the first thing that comes to mind when you ask a so-called black person, right? What is their nationality? Go ahead.
It's the book of Job, chapter 9, verse 24. The earth is given into the hands of the wicked. He covered the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is
So
it?
one thing we have to understand is that this world is given to the hands of the wicked. It is their job to keep you indoctrinated. It is their job to keep you confused. It is their job to keep you from going to your true identity. And that was the main reason why the slaves couldn't read, why they didn't want them to read. Or when they did allow them to read the Bible, they gave them what? The slave Bible. They didn't show them all the history and everything that they was connected within the Bible or the full book in order for them to see that those are their people. And that the ones in the scriptures, they was rebelling against their oppressors the same way as we started rebelling against our oppressors and our revolts, right? And, another fun fact, most of the revolts that happened from the slaves is once they got their hand on the full Bible and they began to read. Like Nat Turner, he knew exactly that there was some type of connection with the Israelites and his seed. So that caused him to go ahead and want to revolt. That caused him to have power. So when they say your history does not matter or just forget the past, there is a reason why the so-called white man continues to remind you of 9/11. There's a reason why when your kids go to school, it is a fact that they have to know about the U.S. Constitution and where it comes from. If history didn't matter, then why they got to learn about the U.S. Constitution and how it was founded, right? That's our question. So, give me 1 Maccabees chapter 3, verse 48. And 1 Maccabees is in your Apocrypha. For those that don't know, the Apocrypha is books that was taken out of the scriptures originally found in the 1611 version. If you read the 1611 version, then you'll see that it has more books in there. But the modern day King James versions, or these other versions that we have, we see that it's taken out. So give me First Maccabees.
The book of First Maccabees, chapter 3, verse 48. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
So back in history, one thing that you'll learn about history repeats itself. So something that happened in history way back then that still happens to this day is that our oppressors seek to take our images and make those images look like theirs. So that's why when you go to the church, what do you see on the wall? You see disciples that are Edomites now, or white skin, or Caucasian, or European, whatever you want to call it. Or we see Christ, Jesus Christ, right? We see Jesus Christ with long, stringy hair, with blue eyes. I have no connection with Revelation chapter 1. What do we see? That's all we see now. It's because the oppressor understands that we are visual learners. Visual. We require a sign. We need identity. We have to look at something in order for us to feel like it's true. We want to see it. It's a big thing when I think it was a video I seen on social media. It was a kid, and he was happy because the cartoon character looked just like him. He doesn't have any connection to that cartoon character, but just because the cartoon character looked just like him, it brought him joy. So how big is it when you know the Savior of the world looked just like you, right? Read that again, First Maccabees.
From the top. And laid open the book of the law, wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
Right. So the heathen sought to paint the likeness of their images. So now going back to the main topic, being an Israelite and not an African. So let me see. Jacob, why do you think we like to identify ourselves with being African, just from your viewpoint?
Well, they had power once a time, and that's where the Edomites say we're from. So we like to associate ourselves with power.
Exactly. I love that you said that. So he said we like to associate ourselves with power. So what do is when you don't have your history or know exactly where you come from, what you do is you search for it. So once you search for it, the closest nearest in history where you see that we was dominant, you seen that we had power, you seen that we had good finances, we had assets, right? We had all these different type of things. What do we go back to? We go back to Africa, right? We look into the regions of Africa where we were very successful. We look into the regions of Africa where we had a little bit more independence, right? Even contrary to what the so-called white man says, when he says that we didn't have any type of culture, we didn't have any, that we was just savages, that he came in order to free us and help us out and just put us to work. That was not the case. We know that within Africa, there was a lot of great things that we did, which I'm going to show y'all some of those things. But there is still a difference between being an Israelite and an African. Give me Exodus chapter 11, verse 7. And also I want to give a disclaimer. I've seen other people do similar lessons. And, still in the region of Africa, there is still Israelites in that region. So don't get me wrong in regards to the lesson, talking about the Africans and Hermetic and all those type of things. There are still people in Africa that associate themselves with being Israelites. And we actually know something. So it's a fact. But the Most High said that you will be scattered, right? That was a part of the curses, that we will be scattered. So in different regions, we still are coming back to our knowledge. But give me that, Exodus 11 and 7.
It's the book of Exodus, chapter 11, verse 7. But against the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how that the Lord do put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel.
So the Most High put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. So I know a lot of times, even prior to the truth, you might want to say, yeah, I'm Egyptian. I come from the great pharaohs and kings, right? But then you don't understand that the Egyptians even had you in captivity. And you don't understand that there was many African countries, or many people that claim themselves to be African, that had you in captivity. And that's what we're going to bring out. So I'm going to show that to you for those that don't know. So let's go back to the beginning. What does Genesis mean? It means the beginning. Give me Genesis chapter 6. So we're going to focus on Africa. Genesis chapter 6, and let's start at verse 10.
The book of Genesis, chapter 6, verse 10.
Mhm.
And Noah begot 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All right, so Noah had 3 sons. You know about the flood, right? So we know about the flood. Noah had 3 sons. Who knows where does the African comes from out of these 3 sons? Who knows? Go ahead.
Ham.
It comes from Ham. Correct. Now, where does Israel come from, Jason?
Shem.
All praises. So we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Go to Genesis chapter 10, verse 32. So there was a great flood that happened on the earth because we were being wicked. Noah and his family was the only one that was saved. So when everybody say, yeah, we all come from Adam, yeah, that's true because of Noah. Genesis chapter 10 and read verse 32. Go ahead.
The book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 32. These are the families of the sons of Noah, after their generations, in their nations. And by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood.
So after the flood, the world was divided. They had an inheritance. Shem had his inheritance, Ham had his inheritance, and Japheth had his inheritance, right? So they all had their own inheritance, and each one, the whole world right now can go back and source back to one of those 3, right? Each one can source back to one of those 3. So a lot of times, I don't know if y'all heard it before, but I've always heard that so-called black people came from Ham. Why? It's because Ham was known as a progenitor of the dark races. And why? Because they said that Ham had a curse, and that his curse was that he was black, and that your curse is you're taking on his curse, and that's why the so-called white men say, I can put you in slavery because you're cursed anyways. I can put you in slavery because this is the curse that the Most High put on you. There's no consequence that I have in order for putting this bondage on you. So a lot of that, many religions still believe that to this day. If you really get down to the root of where they believe, when you ask them where do so-called African American or black people come from, they always say, oh, well, Ham. We believe it's Ham. Based off of our studies and our evidence, and we believe that it's Ham. Same thing if you see my lesson about the Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't talk about it, but when you go back to their elders and you look up their facts, they'll say, yeah, more than likely they came from Ham. And that's the reason why they go through that slavery. That's the reason why they go through oppression. Go ahead.
Implying that melanated skin is a curse.
Mm.
You see how a religion does that and can get away with little subtle racism? But it's funny because they say Israelites are racist. They're racist. But you see that little bit of subtle racism? Oh, yeah. You guys are Ham, and Ham was cursed. That's why he's black. See that little subtle? Nobody questions that. You know, they only question it when the Israelites on the street talking about the truth.
Right.
You know, but nobody questions those little subtle, even in the Christian, even in Christianity. You know, yeah, oh yeah, the Hamites, yeah, that's a popular teaching. Ham was black because of a curse. But there's no curse related to having melanated skin.
Right.
Like what curse comes with that? We don't get sun cancer.
Right.
We don't get sunburns. You understand what I'm saying? We don't turn pink when we get slapped. You understand? So, you know, go ahead.
Yeah, that's that part right there. And I mean, when you look at the so-called white man, I mean, nature, I always say it when we street teaching, brothers, but you know, nature itself is telling you that the so-called white man is not the chosen one because he can't withstand the sun, right? He can't even survive out there. That's why he was dwelling in them caves. That's where you get the term Caucasian from. Give me Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8. If you're on the live stream, I pulled up a map. So for those that need to actually see it, kind of shows you exactly of where, what inheritance they had, what regions it was. Oh, they must be speaking in tongues over here or something. Anyways, you know, when you look on the map, you'll see that the inheritance that they got. So Shem, he went towards more the Fertile Crescent. Japheth went towards Europe, and Ham, he went towards Africa, the regions of Africa. But Shem also, he inherited a little bit more as well. What does the scripture say? It says, Israel shall be the sand of the sea, right? So a lot of times we had, originally we had a small portion, but it continued to grow because the Most High gave us more land because it's sand of the sea. We're supposed to have that, right? But give me that. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8.
7 verse, right?
Verse 7.
Book of Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask thy father, and he will show thee. Thy elders, and they will tell thee. When the Most High divided the nations, their inheritance.
See, the Most High said he divided the nations. So what is Black History Month, right? What was Martin Luther King trying to do? Martin Luther King felt like we was integrated, that we would be more successful, right? But with the Most High, what did the Most High say, though?
Divided the nation.
He divided the nations. Division. I know it doesn't sound right to you, but the Most High, he said he set order and he divided it. The same way as you'll have a filer, right? You file your paperwork. You're not just gonna put all your paperwork together. You're gonna put and you're gonna categorize what is more important and what needs to be placed. So good thing for us, you're more categorized as being to have rulership, have dominion, having power, and you have a law to give to the rest of the world. So when they tell you that we need to be integrated, you show them this scripture that the Most High always wanted us to be segregated, right? Go ahead.
The Most High divided the nations, their inheritance. When he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the numbers of the children of Israel.
And look at that. The Most High was like, you first priority, and everybody else get their piece after. It's like you get the first slice of cake, and everybody else get the crumbs. Everybody else get whatever is left over because you're the main priority. That's all that it is. And this might be some new news for some people, but when we were segregated, separate, we was more successful. We had our own banks. We were more independent. We didn't need to rely on them. What is one of the curses? One of the curses said that we will be spoiled because we're dependent based off of the other nations. So being here, what does that look like? That look like paying taxes. That looks like surviving off of Section 8 welfare. That looks like sending your kids to their school system to learn their history. So they come back home with the American flag, and they know the American flag, the anthem, the national anthem, right? Yeah, the national anthem. They don't know anything about being an Israelite. They don't know anything about where you come from and how you even got here in America. They start Black History Month with Martin Luther King, or Rosa Parks. They got one page or a couple paragraphs from Malcolm X. They don't cover Marcus Garvey. They don't cover Marcus Garvey. They don't cover all the other revolutionaries. They just cover a little small aspect. Close the book. That's Black History Month. Move on to the next. So let me tell you how we need to remember 9/11, right? So we got to get back. This lesson is just to get back to knowing your identity of who you are. So there is a difference, right? Go ahead. You could drop that. Let's go to Genesis chapter 10. Genesis chapter 10, and give me verse 6. So right now we're focusing on Ham. As Jason said, that the so-called African comes from Ham. Genesis chapter 10, and you can read verse 6.
Verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, and Put, and Canaan.
Right. So the sons of Ham. So this is give me the Bible dictionary too. So we're focusing on Ham right now, on where he comes from and who is his offspring. Who is it? When you want to go back, what helps as you're reading through the scriptures, I know there's so many names that you probably can't pronounce. There's so many people that are referenced, but you always go back to Genesis to the beginning to see where they come from. Definitely a good tool to use. But give me that. So the Bible dictionary, we're going to read it out of the Bible dictionary about Ham. So we just read that the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan, right? Go ahead.
This is the Bible dictionary, Zondervan Compact.
So this is what the scholars say. Go ahead.
Page 213. Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races.
So it says that Ham was a progenitor of the dark races. That's what it says about Ham. That's what the scholars say. But also they say something else. Go ahead.
Not the Negroes.
Not the what?
Not the Negroes.
It says not the Negroes. So already right there, that should bring a red flag to your mind. Okay, then there must be a difference between the dark races and the Negroes. We know that the Negroes are melanated, right? New, another thing that is new that people don't know is that majority of the world are melanated. Majority of the world is melanated. I know the so-called white man try to make it seem like he's majority of the world. A majority of the world is Caucasian or white skin or red skin, whatever you want to say. But in reality, majority of the world is melanated. You got even Japanese people that's melanated. Threw me off seeing them images. You got people in China. You got people in just different areas across the world, and majority of them are melanated. I remember I had a teacher back in high school. She was from Brazil, and she was an Edomite, and she used to say, you know, that Brazil was on the map for the most prettiest woman. I was like, well, they ain't talking about you, but she felt like that was her. And then at that time, I believe it was I think they had the Olympics there, and it was a documentary. They made the Olympics, but they made a wall in certain areas in the ghettos of Brazil. And when you go into the ghettos of Brazil, they look just like how me and Aram look. They look just like how Rata look. They look just like how most of us look in here. Because in those regions, that's where you dwell. In these regions across the world, you dwell across the world. Your people is the one, the melanin was something that we had that was more popular. The so-called white man didn't come on or showing Salakia. The so-called white man, when he came onto the earth, it was a new thing because his skin. That's why in Genesis chapter 25, they would say, yeah, he looked different. Esau, they say, hey, he looked red and hairy all over. What they say about Jacob, though? They said Jacob was a normal man. He was normal. What they say to Moses when he put his hand in his bosom and he took it out? They said it was white. It was clear. That's snow. And somebody put it back and went back to his other flesh. What was his other flesh? Exactly. So the so-called white man, he always tried to make it sound like, now he did a great job. He did a great job of being integrated. And when you go to Africa now, you even see that he's there. He's present. Him and the Arabians. He is present. But the so-called white man has somehow strategically went through all nations and made it seem like that he is the image. He is the image. But go ahead and, is that all that?
No. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negro, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, and the Canaanites.
So they said not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, the Libyans, not the Negroes. So that means that there's something different about being a Negro, right? Which just means black. But there is a difference between these Egyptians, these Libyans, these Canaanites, or there's a difference between these African tribes and the Negroes. How so? How so? How is that? It's because the Most High made you different. What was the scripture? So go back to Genesis chapter 10 and read verse 6 again.
The book of Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan.
God.
And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabta, and Ra'amah, and Saseka, and the sons of Ra'amah, Sheba, and Dedan.
Okay, you can stop right there. So Cush, who knows about Cush? Your modern day, who is the Cushites? Does anybody know? Anybody know? Who is Cush? Go ahead, Gadol. Pass the mic.
Is that the Egyptians?
No. Go ahead, yeah, somebody said it. I see
Ethiopians.
the Ethiopians. Yes, the Cushites are the Ethiopians. So brothers, y'all can write this down if you'd like to. I'm gonna pull it up on my screen. The concordance is H3568. H3568. And it says, let's hear how it is pronounced.
Strong's H3568. Kush.
So it's Cush,
Kush.
right? Or Kush, whatever you want to call it. So it says that Cush comes from Ethiopia, or the Ethiopians. But another term for Cush is just black, right? So Cush is the Ethiopians. So now give me Genesis, or continue reading read verse 8. Go ahead.
Verse 8. And Cush begot Nimrod, he began to be a mighty one.
Who knows about Nimrod? God, go ahead and tell me about Nimrod.
Or me.
Go ahead. Yeah. All right. He said I'm passing to Jason. Go ahead, Jason.
He's just the sun god, so-called son of God, that was born supposedly on December 25th when people celebrate Christmas.
Exactly. Good. And he's been studying. Go ahead. Continue reading.
God, verse 8. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it was said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord.
Now, this man was a mighty hunter. Strong, right? Go ahead.
Verse 10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel.
It says the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Where does that stem from? What nation? What is Babel? The Babylonians, correct. The Babylonians. So the Ethiopians were actually the Babylonians. So didn't we go into captivity under the Babylonians? So that means when you see that image, I think it's called the Ark of Titus. When you see the image of them going into destroying the temple, the first temple that we had, those were Babylonians, or what you'll call it, Ethiopians. So while we claiming ourselves to be Ethiopian, we gotta realize that you even went in captivity under them. They put you in captivity, and that's when your temple was destroyed. Give me 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 17. The book of 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 17 and 18.
The book of 2 Kings chapter 20, verse 17. It says, Behold, the days come that all that is in thy house and that which thy fathers have laid up in the stores unto this day shall be carried into Babylon. Nothing shall be left, saith the Lord.
Nothing shall be left unto saith the Lord. So the same way we got ravaged by the Babylonians as well, which is your Ethiopians. Go ahead.
Verse 18. And of thy sons that shall issue from thee, which thou shalt beget, shall they take away.
And took away your sons as well. Go ahead.
And they shall be eunuchs in the place of the king of Babylon.
In the palace of Babylon, right? So they took all of our gold. I don't know if you ever seen the image. Look it up. It's called the Ark of Titus. That's when they went in and they had the big old menorah and holding it through. It was made out of gold. That was your first temple, and they destroyed it. They savaged it and took all the gold out of it. So the same way we talk about the white man taking all our gold and our assets and all our valuables, right? Saying everything, they have all our artifacts and all our history, is the same way that the Babylonians or the Ethiopians did the same thing to you back in ancient times. Same exact thing. Let's go ahead and, that's it. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. We'll move on to the next one. Genesis chapter 10, verse 6.
It's the book of Genesis chapter 10, verse 6. And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim.
All right, we'll stop right there. Mizraim. Gadol. Who does Mizraim go back to? You said it earlier. The Egyptians. So the same thing. So the Egyptians also, did not we go into captivity under the Egyptians as well? We went into captivity under the Egyptians. And a lot of times we like to say that we Egyptian or Ethiopian, but now we seeing and the Africans on key was doing us dirty too. They was putting us in hell and chattel slavery the same way as the white men put us in hell and chattel slavery. Go ahead.
That right there cuts a lot of our brothers and sisters might be getting into Egyptology.
Exactly.
And say they're Egyptologists. Well, they're basically saying that they are who their oppressors once were.
Exactly. And it's funny because then they'll tell us that we're following the white man book. And they'll tell us that we're following after the white man religion. But then they don't realize that they're following the customs of their oppressors, of our oppressors back then. So it's funny, and it's a real funny fact. I think, what is it? Remember the Hermetic Hypothesis? That's another thing y'all can write down. Hermetic Hypothesis. I didn't know what that was. But the Hermetic Hypothesis is basically a theory where they feel like the Ham is originally the Caucasians, originally white people. and that they progenerated everybody, that they was the original one, basically. So, but they basically use that theory in order to keep their seed alive, to hide their identity, because we know where Esau come from, or we know who the white man come from Esau, right? He tries to hide his identity, and that's what he's always been trying to do. That's why when you see the movies about Egypt and the pharaohs and the kings, they look just like white people, surprisingly. When you see all the movies about Noah, they look just like white people, right? Every movie that he has that's a Bible-based movie, it always has to look like him. Always has to look like him, right? But so Mizraim, I wrote it down as well for this one. This one is H4714. So these are your Egyptians. Mizraim. Give me Exodus chapter 1, verse 5. So
the book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 5.
So basically, all we doing right now is we're identifying the African in the Bible. That's it. We're showing the difference between being an Israelite and an African and what the Africans did do to you, right? Go ahead.
Verse 5. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already.
For those that don't know, it was a big thing. We was always connected with being in Egypt or being in the regions of Africa. Always. Majority of the time, when you read in the Bible in Genesis, when it talks about the different rivers that the Garden of Eden comes from, when it talks, everything that in Genesis that is talking about the regions is centered around that area. It comes from in that area around Africa. So Joseph, which is our beloved brother, he was in Africa. Joseph, he made sure he helped the African or the Egyptians on making sure that their kingdom is strong. He became even a second in command with the Egyptians as well. So that was something that was very common. Even when you look at, what was it, Herod with Christ? Even Christ, when Herod sent the message, when Herod was looking for Christ, where did him and his parents go to? They went to Egypt because it was very close in region. You can travel there, right? And that's exactly what they did. So we was always in those regions. But unfortunately, even being in those regions, they still put us in captivity and still oppressed us. Go ahead.
Verse 6. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceedingly mighty, and the land was filled with them.
So as we do, the same thing as it happens in America, right? While we was in Egypt, when we was dwelling in Egypt, we still exceeded, we still became fruitful. We still continued to reproduce, and we started exceeding our lives. So the king was like, man, they growing a little too much. They get a little bit more too mighty, right? Go ahead.
Verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
So this new king had no idea who Joseph was. He had no idea on how big of an impact the Israelites had on the Egyptians at the time. He was done with that. Go ahead.
Verse 9. And he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when they're fallen out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
So the same thing that the so-called white man does currently right now is the same thing that the Egyptians did, unfortunately. And what were some of the methods that they did? They made sure that your first seed or there was no male child that was able to be born. They're supposed to put them to death. All these different, what is that in America? That's your abortion rates, right? So the Egyptians dealt with us in a wise way, and they wanted to make sure that we wouldn't continue to grow. So they put us in chattel slavery. Go ahead.
Verse 11. Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens.
That's like being on the field, your slave master, right? It's the same thing that the Egyptians was doing. They set up taskmasters over us to afflict us. Great burdens. Go ahead.
And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities.
The same thing how we built the White House. Same thing how we built all the main capitals and all those things for America. It's the same thing we was doing for the Egyptians at the time. Go ahead.
Pithom and Ramesses.
Uh-huh.
Verse 12. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew.
But the more that they afflicted them, the more that they grew. They still continue to give seed. The same thing that we do in America. Still going through hell, but we still continue to populate. The white man's seed goes off, we continue to grow, right? Go ahead.
And they were grieved because of the children of Israel. And the Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, and they made their wives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. And all their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor.
So they put us under, what is that? That's just hard slavery. That's it. We went into hard bondage being under the Egyptians. So even though we look at how great Egypt was, the reason why it was so great is because we were there working for them. When you look into it, history repeats itself. It's so funny. Any country or kingdom that was up, the reason why they was up and successful is because you was in captivity. So because the Egyptians were, when they was in power, they had all the gold, all the great pharaohs, you was in captivity. When the Babylonians was ruling majority of the region, you was in captivity. When the Assyrians was in great power, you was in captivity under them. When the Greeks were in great power, under Alexander the Great and all these different type of Edomites, you was in captivity. When the Romans was great, you was in captivity. Where we at now? We in America. America is great. Where you at? You in captivity. So it's the same exact thing. History repeats itself. History repeats itself. So go ahead.
You speak on that verse 14.
Yeah.
It reminds me of my job at verse 14 because our Edomite oppressor, I like to call him, who owned a company, he figured like I can cut 30% of the workforce, and then I'll have the 70% cover the 30% by giving them overtime. So everybody has to do regularly 8-hour shifts, but you know what? Now we're going to cut 30%. Now everybody has to do a mandatory 12 and 15 with an option. So I turned up the burden. I made more money with less. Before the modern day Egyptians did it, which is America, you see the ancient Egyptians did the same thing. They did the same thing. They said, you know what? We're going to cut the amount of work that you guys are doing, and we're going to, the machinery, and we're going to just make the manpower, make you guys do it by yourself. You know what I'm saying? Cut out the machinery, now you got to bury it and cut and carry it on your backs. Don't give them the cranes, make them do it themselves with their hands. You know what I'm saying? That's the same, and it kind of reminds me of my job. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to cut the workforce, cut out the people so he can save money per capita and just get more work out of like the 70% and
Right.
Get rid of the 30.
Right.
So
That's it, man. That's that great rigor. And it's crazy. Can you get Revelation chapter 11, verse 8? Came to mind. Because like I said, history repeats itself. This is not your first captivity at all. I know a lot of times we feel like, oh man, we get on the white man now. He has done some harm, definitely. You know, he's the greatest enemy, right? He's always been the greatest enemy. But let's not forget that all other nations, they did similar things to you too. And that's why the Most High is so mad. That's why you got to cleanse the earth. Because all these other heathens that might seem so peaceful, want to look out for you, they still put you in bondage. As long as you was to their benefit, that's exactly where they kept you at, in bondage. That's it. Give me Revelation chapter 11, verse 8.
the book of Revelation, chapter 11, verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the streets of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt.
So the scriptures say in future time that our dead bodies is going to lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. And we know about Sodom already, Sodom and Gomorrah. We know about the fornication. We know about the sexual immorality. But what about Egypt? It's because America, which is modern day, which is Babylon the Great, they do exactly the reason why Revelation calls it spiritually Egypt as well, is because they still put you in bondage the same way that the Egyptians did. You know what the Egyptians did? They have both the southern kingdom and the northern kingdom. You know what America does? They have both southern kingdom and northern kingdom. It's the same exact thing, same exact concept. So bringing this scripture out just to prove or showing back up what Brother Iram is saying, and that's the funny part. You look in these warehouses, construction sites, you look at all these hard-working labor jobs, so you see in there, you see most of our people getting paid minimum wage. You see most of our people getting done wrong. You see most of our people in there trying to survive and make ends meet for their families. And it's funny because a lot of them, they work with the main boss, works with other agencies, and they pay the agency more while they pay the workers less. It's a crazy concept. Why? It's because you're still nothing. You're still 3/5 of a human being. That means I can put this extra chattel slavery on you. You still gonna survive as you did in the cotton fields, as you did throughout history, everywhere you went. Exactly. So let's go back. Where we at? Salakia.
Exodus 1.
Yeah. Give me Exodus chapter 3, verse 7. So back to Exodus, Egypt, right? Egypt put us, we went into Egyptian captivity. They put us in chattel slavery. Same thing. Northern kingdom and southern kingdom. It's the same exact thing. So it became a time, we know about Moses, right? Let my people go. You know, Passover coming up. Definitely want to start getting acclimated with that history too. Because that's the reason why we celebrate the deaths of the Egyptians. We're not claiming ourselves to be Egyptian no more. We celebrating the death of the Egyptians and everything that they did to us. That's exactly what we're doing right now. So it came a time, Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 and verse 8. So it came a time where Moses, you know, he had a job, right? He had to go to Pharaoh and give the word from the Most High, and he gave him in order to let our people go. That's exactly what he was supposed to do. And Moses was nervous. Most High told him to be quiet and continue working and do what I say, right? Same exact thing. That's what we're doing here in America. Hey, America might seem so big and great and powerful, strong, army, whatever it might be. Most High says still go on those street corners and preach the word. Regardless, you might be nervous, you might not. Whatever it is, you still got to put the work in. Same thing. So Exodus chapter 3, verse 7.
Verse 7, the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt.
So the Most High, he's seen the affliction. He's seen the affliction while he was in Egypt, right? And that's why he came and wanted to free us. Go ahead.
And have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I am come down to deliver them out of the hands of the Egyptians.
Out of the hands of the Egyptians. Go ahead.
And to bring them out of the land unto a good land and large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites.
So while we was in captivity under the Egyptians, Most High said he was going to free us. That's exactly what he did. He had to go into the wilderness. We're supposed to go into the promised land. But we also inherited the land of Canaan. Now that was back in Genesis chapter 10, where it talked about Canaan. It said Cush, Mizraim, Phut, and Canaan. So we had inherited the land of the Canaanites as well, which is another African nation, right? Give me Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1.
Book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7, from the top. It says, when the Lord thy power shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it.
So the Most High said, look, he brought you out of Egypt to go to a land. You had a specific land, which is the land of Canaan, right? But he said, when I take you to that land, there's a certain requirement that you have. Go ahead.
And has cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than thou.
All these nations mentioned right here are all African nations. All of these come from Ham. These are all African nations that the Most High said, I'm going to send you to their land, and you're going to conquer that land. It's going to be your land now, right? That's what the Most High has said. Read verse 2.
Verse 2. And when the Lord thy power shall deliver them before thee, thou shalt smite them.
Thou shalt make what?
And smite them.
Peace.
Smite
The
them.
Most High said, we shall smite them. That's exactly what we had to do. He said, when you go to this land of milk and honey, he said, it's going to be some African tribes here. And he said, what I'm going to need you to do is what?
Smite them.
Smite them. Go ahead.
And utterly destroy them.
And destroy them. Go ahead.
Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them.
So Most High says, don't make no covenant. Don't show no mercy. Why? It's because you was just in captivity to them. And the Most High made a difference, as we read in Exodus chapter 11, verse 7. He made a difference between the Egyptian, or your so-called Africans, and the Israelites. Go ahead.
Verse 3. Neither should thou make marriages with them.
Don't marry them.
Thy daughters thou shalt not give unto his son,
We shouldn't marry our kids to them. Go ahead.
nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son.
Nor can their kids marry our kids. Go ahead.
For they will turn away thy son from following
He
me.
says they will turn away their son from following me. Now, why is that? It's because what happened with Leviticus 18? We know about Leviticus 18, right? Leviticus 18 is a law. Okay, he said no. Let's get Leviticus 18 real quick. Oh no, nobody. No. So when we came out of Egypt, Brother Troy, right?
Yes, sir.
When we came out of Egypt, we did a lot of the customs of the Egyptians. So when we came out, the Most High had to remind us of where, like, of our law, basically, of our original law that we had before time, but we went away from it. We was in Egypt for about 430 years. So that's like what America, right? It's been about a little bit more over than 400 years. For the Northern Kingdom, it's been way more. But for the Southern Kingdom, we've been in America for over for about
Just 400 years.
just 400 years, right? So we was in Egypt for about the same period of time, 430 years. So imagine while you're being in a different land around other people, you're gonna start taking on their customs. So while they was breaking their holidays, we was celebrating their holidays. While they was eating their food, we was eating their food. While we was doing anything that they was doing in their region, we was a part of that. That's exactly what we was doing. We still had somewhat of an identity in there, knowing that we Israelites, but there was a lot of people in there that didn't know. So Leviticus 18 is a part of the law that he gave us when we came out of Egypt. And go ahead and read verse 1.
It's the book of Leviticus chapter 18, verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, I am the Lord your power. After the doings of the lands of Egypt, wherein ye dwelt, shall ye not do.
Shall ye not do. So we have to cleanse our way from how the Egyptians was living. And when you continue reading down this chapter, you're going to see a whole bunch of sexual immorality, disgusting, whatever, diabolical, whatever it is. You're going to see a lot of things. You'll see a lot about sleeping with your father's wife. You're going to see a lot about sleeping with the same kin. You're going to see a lot about homosexuality. The Egyptians did the same thing. And it's funny now because when for the woke LGBTQ, whatever it is, HIV, yeah, the whole alphabet. HIV. For the woke ones, you know what they'll say? They'll say, well, it's okay for us to do this. This is what we was doing in Africa. This is what we was doing while we was in Egypt, and we was great. So why we can't do it now? We're just getting back to our history. You see how dangerous it is to call yourself an Egyptian? See how crazy that is? Just that alone, now you're like, yeah, we Egyptians, we do everything that they do. If you look into it, they be doing some crazy stuff over here too. Go ahead.
You know, was that really unique just to Egypt? Because from what I see, it seems like every captivity, we have the same problem. Like God was warning us, stay away from their women, because their women will lead you astray, and we ignore that, it seems like every single time, and they lead us into all of these, their women, not our women, their women lead us into these, immoral practices, immoral sexuality, away from our true Father.
Yep.
And then the cycle repeats itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not just Egypt, it's pretty much every captivity where that cycle took place.
Exactly. Every single captivity is the same exact thing. And that's why we wasn't supposed to marry with their woman, right? We wasn't supposed to mix with them. That's why in Deuteronomy 7, as we read, he said, when you go there, destroy them. He said, get them out because that's where you're supposed to dwell. So everywhere we went, same exact thing. We wasn't supposed to. This was a lesson in the beginning where it showed not marrying other women from other nations. But then it was continued as you go through the precepts. You see different stories. It was the same exact thing. Solomon, same thing. That was one of his downfalls, right? He had multiple women and he started kind of going towards what they was doing. Started worshiping their gods. Can you give me a Toby too? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that would apply today. Basically, interracial marriage is not happening.
Exactly. It's the same thing. So we got to learn from our mistakes. History repeats itself, but you got to learn about history so you know not to go down that path no more, right?
It seems that that's wrong. Or have I been conditioned, brainwashed to, you know what I mean?
Sorry, what'd you say?
It seems like basically saying, like interracial marriage, like to not do that would be wrong. It seems like off the top, it comes across as a wrong belief.
Yeah.
But in actuality, that's the truth.
Exactly. So
we shouldn't intermix, we shouldn't intermarry, we should stay to our own.
Stay to your own. The reason why it seems wrong is because of where we live and how we be indoctrinated so much. It seems wrong. The Western, what is it? What do they call it? Western civilization. You look at the Western side of the world, these things are new. The way that America lives is not the same way that the other world lives on the other side. That's why they have continual war on that side, because America says you can just do whatever you want. Let's be all one. Let's have no laws. Let's not have no religion. Let's not have no division. Let's just be one and let's just love, right? But when you look at the other nations, or when you go to the other areas, like in the Middle East, man, no, you're not about to marry this Arab woman. She's going to be married to somebody that I know close and kin to my family.
Arranged marriage.
There's arranged marriages, right? All these different things, those are the customs. Right now, that's why we call it Babylon the Great. When you look into the word Babylon, all it means is confusion. It brings a lot of confusion. So, but no, that's a great question. That's a great inquiry as well. But the truth to the matter is that we was always supposed to be separate. Separate. Right. Yeah, no problem. Give me that Toby.
The book of Tobit, chapter 4, verse 12. It says, behold, or beware of all whoredom, my son, and chiefly take a wife of thy seed of thy fathers, and take not a strange woman to wife, which is not of thy father's tribe.
Exactly. So that's what he was saying. So he was like, look, behold, he said, take a wife of your father's tribe. Stay close and kin. Because in your tribe, when you go back to it, each tribe had an inheritance. You had a region of land that belonged to yours. So you would stay within your tribe. If your daughter goes and marry a man of another nation, or even from a different tribe, she will have to go to that area. Or he will have dominance over her now because he's the head. So it was a beware thing, and we seen that this was something that we didn't want to do, or that we shouldn't have did. Most High gave us warning, but of course we didn't listen. So now we're here trying to reflect on the matter and get back to it, right? Go ahead.
Come, for we are the children of the prophets, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Remember, my son, that our fathers from the beginning, even that they all married wives of their own kindred, and were blessing their children.
They were blessed with their children. They were blessing their children because they didn't go and do interracial marriages, because we were able to stay on ours. When you think about it, if a woman goes and marry, she an Israelite, but then she goes and marry an Asian man that follows Buddha, and they have kids, who is the kids going to worship? What God, right? It's going to be Buddha more than likely. He's going to go and worship Buddha. Now you don't have, now our woman is over there worshiping Buddha, right? Are these different type of gods and deities that is part of their tradition? But everything is ours. See, that brings so much confusion within the household where the kids is like, wait, well, mom not keeping this. Mom not celebrating Christmas. That's why we don't encourage any type of marriage for an unbeliever, because it can cause a lot of confusion in the household. That's why you want to do your best with getting everybody on one accord. Most I was big on that. Go ahead.
And you know, to Americans, this sounds, well, I'm not even gonna say to Americans, to poor Americans, this sounds crazy. Oh my gosh, did he say that we can't love who we need to love? Oh, I can't love. Love has no bearings and no. Go back in history. You go back in history, right? Why is history important? That's the class we all fell asleep in, right? But why is history important? History is important because it shows you your future and reality. What did they used to do in war? They did what? They killed all the men and took all. Why? Because literally they tried to wipe out the seed of that nation, of their enemies. That's why during wars, go back, wars, they would go, they would take out the men and do what? Take the women. All the way up until the 1800s, all the way up into modern times. What did they do in slavery? They took the men, got them out of the picture, but what did they do with our women? They raped our women. Even though we were animals, right? They still raped our women, right? We're supposed to be animals, we're not humans, but they
Right.
still took and did their way with our women. Why? Because they understood the concept of their understanding that their seed is being passed through the loins of the man, right? So now, fast forward to today. White people with money, you think they white daughters is marrying you? We're not talking about white people in the industry. We're not talking about famous. See, y'all gotta get out of that famous people and stars and singers, and we're not talking about them. We're talking about real white people with money. What happened to recently? What's the rapper name? Not Kanye. What's the rapper name? He a Jew. He a Jew. He be with Jay-Z a lot. What's his name? Jay Electronica.
Oh, yeah,
His wife is what? His girl was a fake Jew, right?
yeah.
They disowned her. Nobody said nothing to them. The fake Jews can disown they daughters and all that. Even now, I work in a fake Jewish community. They do not marry outside of their race. They keep their ways pure.
Right.
Negroes and poor white people are the only, and people that are hypersexual are the only people that fall for that. We all need to just lie with each other. Like, no. When you breed an animal, right? You breed an animal. See, a lot of people, they don't like to take the facts. Let's say a pit bull and a German shepherd. What is that called? It's called a mutt. Why is it called a mutt? It's not going to be stable. That animal is not going to be stable. What animal is worth? What animal is worth all the money? The pure blood pit bull or that mutt pit bull? Why? Because the closest is pure to his bloodline. So y'all don't understand the what's the word I'm looking for? The genetic advantages of the pure bloodline. But you know who understands that better than anybody? No, the Most High. The Most High. No, look, listen, go, real quick. Let me get this scripture real quick. Go to Ezra 9:2. Get Ezra 9:2. You get a white man too much credit to talk about. White man be knowing everything. Huh? Get Ezra 9:2 real quick. Read that.
The book of Ezra, chapter 9, verse 2. For they have taken of their daughters for themselves.
Why does it say they have taken of their daughters? Do you notice that it's more so when you see things like this happening, it's always the women that they go after, they're taking their daughters. Either they're taking our daughters or we're going to their women, right? Watch this. And what do we do? Read.
For they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed,
the what?
The holy seed.
The holy seed, because you guys are thinking of a level. Let me just be honest with you, and I'm gonna hand it back over to my brother. You guys are too emotional. A creator is not emotional. The Most High God's not emotional. What do I mean by he's not emotional? Does that mean that the Lord doesn't have feelings and that he doesn't love and have compassion? That doesn't mean that. Emotional means he doesn't care how you personally feel about something. The way he created it is how he created it. See, in Christianity, you create the God you want. Let me show you how you create the God you want in Christianity. Oh, my God will never do that. You sure? Because I'll read the scriptures and show you where your God destroyed a whole bunch of people. But my God will never. Yeah, you know what? You're right. Your God, but not the God Yahweh.
Right.
The God, the eternal, the self-existent one. He's not worried about you. Well, I love him. He's not worried about that. He's worried about a particular duty that he has created you to be. And that's a holy seed. And when you go outside of that, you think he cares that you're crying because you can't marry Brad? Think he care about that? Not at all. Watch this. Read. Watch.
For they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed have mingled themselves with the people of those lands. Yea, the hand of the princes and rulers have been chief in this trespass.
In this what?
In this trespass.
The Lord said that's a trespass. He said the rulers of the cities have been chief. in this trespass. Meaning he frowned upon that. Why? Because your seed is holy. You're the holy one. You're the holy seed. Who runs the fastest? Who jumps the highest? Who's the strongest? Who's the smartest? It's a fact. Who's the most influential? You. So when you take your seed line and you mingle that with a heathen, why would you even want to pollute your? That's what the Lord is saying. It's the holy seed. Your children are stronger. Now, I'm not going to go too deep in this. I did a lesson on this, dealing with marriage and how your partner is supposed to be equally yoked with you, things of that nature. But you guys don't even understand. You're looking at it in just a basic way of being equally yoked. You even got to be genetically equally yoked. That's a fact. Do you see the difference in your kids? Do y'all realize? I'm gonna be honest. I do gotta hand it to my brother, but I gotta tell y'all the truth right now. Do y'all ever realize? And I'm gonna just call it out. I got a cousin, right? And she married, dude, whatever. He a mixed dude, whatever. Okay. Kids are crazy. Have you ever seen a mixed little boy, mixed little? They're crazy. Am I lying? Now I'm not saying other kids are not, bad or high behavior. Probably what I'm saying is crazy. Look crazy, act crazy. I'm serious. I'm not playing with you. I'm dead serious. It's a fact. When you get somebody that's equally yoked, right? Like I always say with me and my wife, right? I love my wife. We equally yoked. When I look at my kids, I see a purity in them. I see a specialness to them because their mother and I are equally yoked. Genetically, because we are the same race, and because we're one accord with the teaching. Do you see the beauty that can come from that? Y'all see that? So now my kids don't have to grow up and say, well, my mom is white, dad. Don't gotta do that. They are one accord. They understand that mom and dad is equally. That's a whole nother topic, but just to piggyback land me back, Salakia, on what the brother was asking and stuff like that. And Live was going on. I said Live. And Live was going in onto it. The being genetically inclined with your species is important, and passing on that is important. Every race of people understand that. That's why the Chinese people who they marry, the Japanese people who they marry. You might have a sprinkle of them that marry here and there, other races, but for the most part, who white people marry? We the only people that want to include marriage in everybody. We the only people that do that because we lack knowledge and understanding. All right, but yeah, go ahead.
No, you God. So man, y'all learning something? Yes. God, all praises, man. Give me Psalms 119, verse 130. Psalms chapter 119, verse 130. I want me to get it. Yeah. 130 and then 133 as well.
Psalms chapter 119, verse 130.
Yeah.
Verse 130. And it reads, the interest of thy word giveth light, to giveth understanding unto the simple.
133.
33. Order my steps in thy word, and let not any iniquity have dominion over me.
So that's exactly what we're doing. Bring it back to our order. The Most High says, look, his word it directs our steps. Keeps us away from iniquity, which is sin. Keeps us away from these traps that we did. The greatest people upon the face of the earth put into chattel slavery, put into punishment because the Most High said we didn't listen and obey. So all we doing is we get back to the law and having order again. You must have order. We have to have order, and that's all that we're doing now. So as we talking about these things, the lesson is Israelite, not African. There's a difference between being an African. It's a difference between being an Israelite. You have so much more that is required of you than what an African has. So much more. But let me see. I'll probably skip over this section right here. Okay, so let's go to this next little section right here. So we won't go too deep into. We know that the African, definitely there was a lot of things in the scriptures. We even made the brotherly covenant, which I'm gonna get at the latter end of this lesson. But do y'all even know where the term Africa come from? Y'all know where the term? He's shaking his head. Go ahead, let me know. Go ahead, RB. You got the mic. Go ahead.
Comes from Leo Scipius Africanus.
Leo Scipius Africanus. Yes, and who knows about Leo Africanus? Jacob, you ever heard of Leo Africanus? Gadol, you ever heard of Leo Africanus? All praises.
Oh, you've been studying, huh? You've been studying.
All right, so Leo Africanus, he made a book. It's called The Description of Africa. Leo Africanus is a European that came into Africa, and he was traveling through Africa, and he documented everything about Africa. And he even documented why we was even great at that time. So I have this book, Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, right? So this is talking about pre-Columbus. This is talking about the regions when we was in Africa, a different variety of regions in Africa, and how successful and all the things that we did in those areas too. We had universities. We was big on libraries. There was even a phrase that said if you had, I think it was like less than 100 books, they will mock you because you had less than 100 books. So he was big on education. But Leo Africanus, this is a European because, you know, we always looking for help out other people. We allowed them to come to our universities. Look it up. The school is called University of Sakor, or the Scholars of Timbuktu as well. These are different areas in Africa where we had our own schools and universities, and the so-called white man would come and would try his best to just get inside, try his best to just learn. So he was at the master's table trying to get some crumbs. And it was even, it's a proven fact that even that's where they started learning and how to go through or read maps and how to read the coast when sailing in the ocean and all those type of things. We already knew these things. We were very intellectual people. So let me get some points real quick. Page 41. 1 second, let me get this. So the book is Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust. Give me Job 8 and 8. Get this.
Job chapter 8, verse 8. For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age.
So now you're going to see why it's important to inquire. He said, I pray thee, I'm begging you to inquire of the former age. Go ahead.
For I inquire, I pray thee, of the former age. Prepare thyself to search of their fathers.
That's a lot of searching. Like Rata said, you know, history is not the funnest topic. You know, it's a lot of information. I don't want to, it's a lot for me to go, for you to take on and to divide and dissect and to see what is true, what is not true. It's a lot. It's a lot of research that goes into it, but very important to do so. So let me read this quick little paragraph. So once again, the book is called Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust, right? Christopher Columbus and the African Holocaust. So I'm gonna read page 41, first paragraph. It says, Africa and in parts of Europe, at this period in African history, the University of Sakor. So this is after. So as I mentioned, there was a lot of times we would go into the region of Africa. Who knows about, you know, about the siege of 70 AD, right? Siege of 70 AD, where did we flee to? We fled to Africa, right? Why did we flee to Africa? Because we could blend in those regions. So we flee from Africa. Like I said earlier, where did Christ and his parents flee to? Africa. Why? It's because we could blend into those areas. A lot of times people, they don't realize that. They think like the Bible, they don't look just on the map to see where it was dwelling, where the events was happening. You're in an area where it's predominant and everybody's melanated. But the white man made it so well and made it so, he hypnotized us so well to make it feel like when you read in the Bible, all you think about is white people. They said they went to go talk to a king. He must be white. They went over to this region. They did trade over there. He must be white. That's crazy. When the Bible talks about, in the beginning, it talks about the different nations and where they come from, right? So that's what we get in. So let me go read this real quick. So it says, the scholars of Timbuktu. The scholars of Timbuktu yielded in nothing to the saints and to their sojourns in the foreign universities of Fez, Tunis, and Cairo. They astounded the most learned men in Islam by their erudition, that these Negroes were on a level with the Arabian savants. It's proved by the fact that they were installed as professors in Morocco and Egypt. In contrast to this, we find that the Arabs were not always equal to the requirements of Sakor. So what this is showing is that this is talking about a university that we had. In this university, it was hard to get in. You know, what is a big university is hard to get in? What, Yale? Harvard, right? All these different schools, you got to have an amazing GPA, right? Or amazing IQ. That's the same thing that we had. You couldn't just get in. We was big on education, intellect. We was big on that. And you know, that's another book. Babylon the Temple 2 is a page I was gonna give out there and write it down. You know what I'm talking?
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. You can go ahead and read that one. This one is Babylon the Temple 2. This is showing everything that happened in Timbuktu as well. Go ahead and read that section.
It's the book of Babylon, the Timbuktu, page 90. I'm gonna read the second paragraph, last two sentences, and then the third paragraph. It says, the Jews imported into the western parts of Africa a superior material, educational, and moral cultural soon after 300 AD, and this cultural advancement was not duplicated or exceeded until the incendiary of Muhammad leader Mansa Musa of Maui in 1312 AD.
So what this is saying right here is that we were big on education, basically what I was saying. And there was others that was around, which I'm gonna get this other page in here where it talks about Moors, and it was about the Moors, right? The Moors is something European claimed you as being. They called you Moor, which just means black. You know, they always try to relate you with being black because that's the only way they identify you.
We can't kind of skip over this. Is kind of powerful. I don't know if y'all caught that. It said the Jews had a educational system and they built a community that was so advanced that it was not duplicated until Mansa Musa. You got know Mansa Musa? The richest man that ever walked the earth since Allah. Look on your phone, look on your computer and see how rich he was. All right, just type in, just say Mansa Musa's net worth. How rich was he?
God.
How rich was Mansa Musa?
Net worth.
Net worth. What do you say?
400 billion.
So you gotta think about 400 billion back then. Just think about that type of money back then. They said this level of advancement wasn't duplicated into Mansa Musa, who I believe by this records that he was an Israelite. So this is how we was living.
Mm-hmm.
I know we can't identify with that now because we've been impoverished, we've been so held down and subjugated over here in the Americas. But prior to that, you see this is how we was living. Mansa Musa was the first dude, you know how they make it rain in the strip club? He was going to different towns, throwing gold bags, just throwing them in the air. Because I'm 400 billion. Do you really? Are you counting at that point? We ain't counting the money at that point, right? Now he did this back in the 1300s. You know what I'm saying? Is anybody at 400 billion now? Not yet, huh?
400 billion?
I think Bill Gates is close to that, but he's not there yet, right? You know what I'm saying? Nobody's close to that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So he's still the richest man ever walked the earth. You know, I think Solomon had more money than that. Solomon had all the gold. So I mean, yeah. But I'm gonna get this last paragraph.
Yeah, go ahead.
It says the black Jews had the advantage over the African tribes. They carried their culture, history, law, and written records with them. This assured them a constant precedence for the development of a higher social organization because of the stability of the black Jewish culture. The Jews were not absorbed into the autochthonous population. In fact, the Jews absorbed some of the native tribes. The Jews made use of every opportunity. They were an industrial and skillful people. In the Jewish Ghanaian state were found kings, princes, governors, generals, secretaries, treasurers, revenue agents, judges, architects, engineers, doctors, historians, language interpreters, mathematicians, jewelers, sculptors, masons, carpenters, painters of art, goldsmiths, leather workers, potterers, armorers, solderers, blacksmiths, agriculturalists, etc.
It don't sound like we was just swinging on trees, right? It don't sound like we was some savages swinging on trees without having any type of culture. We was big on education. Look at that. Look at what we finding out when we go into our history and how great of people we was. And we still got that. That's why Revelations 2:9 says, what does it say? It says, thou art rich, right? But you're rich, even though you go through poverty, even though you're oppressed, even though you at a low estate, Most High still say you rich because of what you can hold and what's in here, where you come from. So it's a beautiful thing, man. Y'all learn something though? All right, kind of, I'll praise it. So I got a couple more real quick. We'll switch over. You know, it's the same thing. You know, you look into these books it's gonna say the same thing about where we was dwelling at and how great of people we were, and how big we was on education, how big we was on order. And I remember last year for Black History Month, I did one on thriving communities and how big, and we was like, man, everything got to be organized and neat and nice. That don't sound like what they be talking about us now, right? Now they say, man, we don't got no order, house is dirty, kids is messy, everything, right? But we always was a people that was known as being very orderly, right? Give me Isaiah. Yeah, give me Isaiah chapter 65, verse 15. So let's talk about the term African American. So the brother brought it out, Leo Africanus, right? That's where he coined the name Africa. Now, when you look it up on who named Africa, they say it's a debated topic. But they for sure know that it was either the Greeks or the Romans. It sounds like some Edomites to me, right? So, and then Leo Africanus, he's like the general, he's like the top dog when it comes to if you want to get information about Africa. So he even changed his name to Leo Africanus to like label himself. So Leo Africanus, what's up? Go ahead, give me that. Isaiah 65, verse 15.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 65, verse 15. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen. For the Lord your power shall slay thee and cause his servants by another name. And call his servants by another name.
This is a part of the curse, that you will leave your name and call yourself by another name. So what does that look like? Call yourself by a color, black. Call yourself by a hairstyle, Afro-American. Call yourself all these different, colored, whatever you want to say, people of color, anything.
10 tribe brothers call it language,
Spanish. What they call the 10 tribe brothers? They say spick, right? They call it Afro-Latin, all these different type of things. We claiming ourselves after a hairstyle. We claiming ourselves after a language. We claiming ourselves after our oppressors. Majority of the time, that's it. So, but the Most High, what did he say? Read it again.
Verse 15. And ye shall leave your name for a curse unto my chosen.
So he says you're going to leave your name for a curse to my chosen. And it's funny because we'll call ourselves by these different bywords, but then when you look at the white man don't call himself European American, right? The white man, he doesn't, or when you go to Europe and you're born in Europe, you don't say you're European African. That doesn't even make sense. When you go to these different regions, you don't say that. So where did this term African American even come from? Now, this is actually something that I looked up. Jesse Jackson. So 1988, Jesse Jackson. That was a phrase that was even back then, prior, I believe, like in the 70s. But Jesse Jackson was like, we putting a stamp on it. We African American. And it's funny now because fast forward to 2022, that we see there's a big old discussion about it. Everybody want to just go back to being called black. It's because they don't like the African aspect of it or African American aspect of it. That's why they have the Black Lives Matter instead of African American Lives Matter type thing. So 1988, that's when the name was stamped, and it was something that they did. Give me Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 37. And also remember 10 tribe brothers as well. They were in the regions of Africa. They dwelt in Africa as well. Iran brought a beautiful lesson about Israel being in Africa, the historical proof. And he was showing that even 10 tribes was there as well. 10 tribes. 10 tribes will be your Hispanics, your Latinos. Those are indigenous descent. They were still in those regions as well. And majority of us in here is probably 10 tribes. It's newsflash. Give me Deuteronomy 28, verse 37.
Verse 37. And thou shalt become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations, whither the Lord shall send thee.
Most High is going to make you a byword, a proverb among all nations. That was a curse. That was a curse. The reason we don't have an identity is because the Most High cursed us. Simple as that. We're cursed. We're getting back to that identity. Let's talk about America. Do you know where the term American even comes from? Jacob? Amerigo Vespucci. Amerigo Vespucci. Another Italian, or he's a European but Italian merchant, where the term America comes from. So to me, it sounds like when you identify yourself after the continent of Africa and America, that you're just claiming yourself after two Edomites. That's it. So ain't no connection that you have with calling yourself African American And, you know, we know that our true nationality is an Israelite, right? So now, let me see. There was one more. I don't gotta get that article. We already covered it. So now the next question is, well, is Israel in Africa? I want to cover this real brief. Israel is in Africa as well. It is in Africa. Dwell in Africa. You know, I've seen, you know, some brothers go in on Africa too, and some brothers, but we do have brothers out there in Africa that they claim themselves and they know they're keeping the law. What does the scripture say in the Apocrypha? It says that only my people will keep my precepts. Only. That's how you identify somebody's an Israelite. We've been so mixed, you don't even know what tribe you're really from no more. You don't know where you at no more. You don't know exactly. A man can look, he could look white skinned, but be from the tribe of Judah. Why? It's because it's about the seed line. It's not about the physical characteristics. It's not about the appearance. So the Most High was throwing that in there when they was talking about David. He said, look, don't focus on the appearance. It's because he was getting us prepared for right now. We don't focus on the appearance. And that's why in Revelations, when it talks about a great multitude from nations, it's because we are scattered as a part of it. Give me Deuteronomy 28:25.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 25. The Lord shall cause thee to be smitten before thy enemies. Thou shalt go out one way against them and flee 7 ways before them, and shall be removed into all the kingdoms of the earth.
Shall be removed into all kingdoms of the earth. What is that? That means that you're scattered. That means wherever you go, and it's funny because wherever you go, there's always a ghetto. There's always a ghetto wherever you go. And that ghetto, guess who's going to be there? Us. We going to be there. I remember I was talking to somebody. They was like, yeah, I just moved out the hood. I'm in Victorville now. I said, man, the hood is in Victorville now. You don't escape the hood or the ghetto. It follows you.
That's fact, because now I'm there in Victorville and all that. It's ghetto as hell now, man. Everybody that went out there to try to get into a nice home, man, it's worse in LA now.
Right. That's the thing, man. You go out there and say, I got a house now. And you got the hood follow you. It's not that you living in the hood. You are the hood. I'm gonna make a poem on that. That was cool.
You can take the
Boy out the hood.
Yeah. So man, wherever you go, give me Zechariah chapter 7, verse 14.
Make that a poem.
Yeah, I gotta record that one. I'm gonna write that down. Yeah, Zechariah chapter 7, verse 14.
The book of Zechariah, chapter 7, verse 14. But I have scattered them with a whirlwind among all the nations.
He said, I scattered you with the whirlwind. What does that look like? Being scattered with the whirlwind. That's great. Most times I scatter you from all 4 corners of the earth. You everywhere. You don't have no homeland no more. You everywhere your homeland is inhabited. And someone taking it. But you everywhere, from America all the way to what? The lands of Australia. You everywhere. The smallest little island. There was a brother on here, his family, they was tapped in. He said an area. I looked it up. It was like a small little island off the coast of Australia. I was like, man, it's Israelites over there too. Because what the Most High say? He said, I scattered them with the whirlwind. A whirlwind. That's why he said, I'm going to gather them from the 4 corners of the earth. He's going to bring them all together. Go ahead.
Down from the top. But I have scattered them like a whirlwind among the nations whom they knew not. Thus the land was desolate after them, that no man passed through nor returned. For they laid the pleasant land desolate.
Pleasant land is desolate. It's our homeland, Jerusalem. It's not really desolate, but it is desolate. It's not desolate because nobody's there. It's because the heathen is there. That's why it's desolate. That's exactly why it's desolate. Give me Jeremiah chapter 29. And let's read verse 18.
Let's look at Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 18. And I will persecute them with the sword, with the famine, and with the pestilence, and will deliver them to be removed to all the kingdoms of the earth, to be a curse and an astonishment, and a hissing and a reproach among all nations whither I have driven them.
Saying wherever you go, you're gonna be a reproach, and you're gonna be a byword, proverb, whatever it is. They're gonna have the saying for you. That's what I forgot to add. It was a saying that they had in China for black people. It's everywhere you go, they got a saying for you. It don't matter where you go. You know, they know brothers that say, well, we gotta flee. We gotta flee America and go here. You go to that area, they still got a reproach and a byword for you, ready? They waiting for you. Everywhere you go, they got a saying for you. No matter you in Germany, anywhere, it don't matter. They got a byword and proverb for you because the Most High put that curse on you. So let's get Isaiah chapter 11, verse 11. So Africa is included. I'm not saying our people is not in Africa. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there's a difference between the lineage of Africa and the lineage of being an Israelite. That's it.
It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 11, verse 11. And it shall come to pass that in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people.
So Mosiah said, look, I'm going to redeem my people again. When did he do it the first time? In Egypt, right? But he said it's going to be a second time. I'm going to redeem my people. Go ahead.
Which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea.
He said anywhere they at, from Egypt to Assyria to Pathros to Elam, and that's in the India areas, to the islands of the sea, all them small islands that we don't even know about, that you don't even learn about that much, where our people are dwelling. Mosiah said, I'm going to gather them all, and they coming back, and I'm going to redeem them. That's what's so beautiful, because we're not just in one area. I know right now we talk about, America being Babylon, Babylon the Great, but then our people is everywhere, though, at the same time, and they still get influenced by what Babylon does, because Babylon has its hands in every nation. That's exactly what it is. So it's a beautiful thing, and the Most High is going to redeem us. It's going to redeem us. So let me get this last. Give me Amos, chapter 1, verse 9. So with Amos, so what I'm going to bring out now, as y'all found out, is that unfortunately, the African tribes put us in captivity too. And what does that mean? The Most High is a just God. That means judgment still has to come forth. Judgment still has to come forth. Judgment got to come back to everybody that oppresses people. And that's what the Most High says. So give me Amos chapter 1, verse 9.
The book of Amos, chapter 1, verse 9. Thus said the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Tyrus, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remembered not the brotherly covenant.
So what is this saying? It's talking about Tyrus and Zidon. So these are African tribes as well. These Africans, as you look into history, when we was over there in those areas, they betrayed us. As we were successful in helping them build up, they betrayed us. And they sold us over to the Edomites, which is your so-called white man. They sold us over. Go ahead. Oh, and then I'll read that last part again.
Delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remember not the brotherly covenant.
And they remember not the brotherly covenant. So I want to cover that real quick. Give me 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 11. The brotherly covenant. We actually had a covenant with some of the African tribes. We had a covenant. We did business with them. A lot of times in the scriptures, there's a lot of times when we reached out because we knew that they were some great builders. Hey, if y'all can have me build this, I'll pay you this. We did business, but we was dominant. We was on top. But there was a brotherly covenant that we made back in David's time and back in Solomon's time that we made with your so-called Africans. Right? Give me 2 Samuel chapter 5, verse 11.
Verse 11, and Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees, and carpenters, and masons, and they built David a house.
So Hiram, he was a king of Tyre. He had a covenant with David. David was like, look, hey, I appreciate it. Tyre was like, look, I'm sending everything that you need to build your home. That was the same thing. That's what they was doing. Give me 1 Kings chapter 5, verse 11.
Book of 1 Kings, chapter 5.
So Hiram.
Verse 11. And it reads, and Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 measures of wheat for food to his household, and 20 measures of pure oil, thus gave Solomon to Hiram year by year.
Solomon was, look, giving honor to Hiram, which is an African tribe, or a king of an African tribe. And we did business with them. So when Amos, when it talks about the brotherly covenant, we know that David, who was Solomon's father, David, right? So Solomon continued going it on. It was year to year. Give me chapter 9, verse 30.
You want 12?
Yeah, read verse 12. Salaki, yeah.
Verse 12. And the Lord, Shalaki, and the Lord gave Solomon wisdom as he promised him, and there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and they two made a league together.
We made a league with them. Some time passed, we made a league. So what Amos chapter 1, which we will go back to, is referring to that brotherly covenant that I was talking about, is a league that we created with them. We did business with them. We're supposed to watch our back, we watch theirs. We helped them out. But unfortunately, as we see with the transatlantic slave trade, that was done away with.
And Shalaki, Rabata did a beautiful lesson a couple months ago, probably like 3 months ago. Y'all should go check it out. When he talked, he kind of went in detail on this, right? With the Moors, right? The Moors comprised of 3 people groups. You had us, you had the Canaanites, and you had the Arabs, all comprised of the Moors, which were noble men or black men, you know, as they call them, right? It was just a sophisticated term to just call them Moors. And nevertheless, the Canaanites, who we made this covenant with, or the men of Tyre, we made this covenant with, they always would kind of like find themselves rubbing shoulder with us and kind of doing business with us, even going back to the Punic Wars. We was dealing with them, we was going to war with them and handling business. But some way, somehow, they'll always find a way hating and breaking the covenant with us. We'll get money together and they'll be like, bets us all. Bets all. You know what I mean? Get money together, bets us all. And it was just like a reoccurring theme that would kind of happen all the time with the Canaanites. We'll get money together, we'll be together, and then the bets is off. You know what? We don't like them Israelites no more. You know what I'm saying? Get them up out of the land. Y'all getting too big. Y'all getting too popular. You know what I mean? Because think about it. Manupo or Shaq. We're just gonna outshine them. So naturally, even though we're together, we're gonna just kind of outshine them. And then after a while, the Canaanites was like, y'all gotta get up out of here. Y'all starting to take our women. Y'all a little too fine. You know what I'm saying? Y'all style is hitting on. We need to get them up out of here. So this was the covenant and a pact that we made, because when you reading this, I suggest y'all read Kings. We was kind of selling the whole earth with the Canaanites. This is how we was familiar with the sea. Remember, Solomon had a navy. What is a navy? Army on the water. So we was familiar with selling the earth. We had knowledge of the sea. And who was navigating and who was giving us the knowledge to do that? The Canaanites. They always was doing this. You see what I'm saying? So we already did these things prior. You know what I mean? Way before the transatlantic slave trade, we already had relations with them. But, you know, of course, eventually, like the brother was bringing out in Amos, they broke the pact. The league that he just made with Solomon, they broke it.
God. Yeah, man, that's it. Basically, let's get Amos chapter 1, verse 9. That's the same thing somebody said. That's how they act. Somebody on the comments said, Ham, act like that today. They always have loyalty for their own. He said he worked with them, but that's the same thing. I mean, you see it, you know, when they different. They wasn't with us within the right times, right? They was on the side. So the Africans, they already know that there's a difference. They know that it's a difference between being an Israelite and being African. But let's read that again, and then that was it.
The book of Amos, chapter 1, verse 9. It says, thus said the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Tyre, and 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they delivered up the whole captivity to Edom, and remembered not the brotherly covenant.
Read verse 10.
Verse 10. But I will send a fire on the walls of Tyre, which shall devour the palaces thereof.
So judgment has to come. So it's the same thing. You know, the Africans did as dirty as well as the other nations as well. You got the Moabites, you got the Edomites. All these nations did dirty to us, and the Most High said there's a judgment that's coming for them. So, you know, with that, that's everything. Do we have any questions?
Oh, go to real quick. Get Joel 3.
Go. Oh yeah, that's a good one.
And read verse 1.
Joel chapter 3, verse 1. For behold, In those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem.
So the Most High is going to bring back the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Read.
I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat.
So that's judgment, right? That's that judgment. When the Lord's going to judge all the nations in that final judgment, right? Read.
And will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations in part of my land. And they have cast lots for my people.
Right, so they sold Israel into slavery, cast lots. I know what cast lots is, right? All right, slave trade. 51,000 going twice, 51,000 going 3 times, sold to the man in the blue hat, right? That's cast lots, read.
And have given
bargaining, read.
And have given a boy for a harlot.
Right, so they gave a boy a harlot. All of this they did in slavery. Y'all do know this. They did all of this during the slave trade. Every single thing that we're reading right here, they did that. They sold a boy for a harlot. Yeah, white man is sick, right? Remember, they was having orgies with men too, butt breaking. Y'all gotta look that up. That's what they was doing. They was selling boys for harlot, selling women for wine, trading us like we were animals, right? Read.
And sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. Yea, and what ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon?
Oh, who's Tyre and Zidon? Those are Hamites. Tyre and Zidon. He said, oh, and what have ye to do with me? Oh, Tyre and Zidon. Right? Read.
And all the coast of Palestine.
And the coast of Palestine. Who are your Palestinians? Your Arabs. What did the Africans and the Arabs have to do with our slavery? I want to see you pay attention in history class. Africans and the Arabs had everything to do with our slavery. Who do you think helped the white man take us? That's why it's that one picture. I got the name of that picture. It's that one picture where you got the slave on the ground tied up. You got the Arab with the turban on. You got the African with the spear. And then you got the white man sitting there and they talking. And you got the slave on the ground like this. How the white man, and that's a famous picture. You can Google that right now. How did the white man know where to go and who to get? Remember, in those areas in West Africa, those were kingdoms. That's why we brought it out today in the spirit. When you look up the Negro land map, right? Negro land, type in Negro land and look at that map. Where it has King of Judah right there, off the slave coast, those are kingdoms right there. Those are kingdoms. White man couldn't just go there because they had power, military might in those areas. Those was kingdoms. Those wasn't just no. They try to say just Africans swinging on trees. No, it wasn't that. It was in West Africa, it was thriving kingdoms of Israel in that region. And guess who knew the land? The Arabs and the Africans. But see, y'all didn't catch it though. What's a Moor? Like Rob said. A Moor is just a term of endearment, like a fraternity. That's what being a Moor was back then. It was just like you was a part of a fraternity, right? Like I'm a Moor, meaning I'm of high status. And the Moors were your Africans, your Arabs, and your Israelites. This is factual history you can research. So the Africans and the Arabs partnered up, teamed up before the white man came. And what did they have to create? The Arabic slave trade. That was a slave trade before the white man came. There was intertribal wars going on way before the white man came. So when the white man finally got over there, what did he do? He went to the Arabs. He went to the Africans in the region. He said, hey, man, what's up with this? You know, what can I do? Who can I? Oh, you know what? Some pesky Jews over there that's living in West Africa that's got the Ashanti kingdom. Y'all know Ashanti is a Hebrew word, right? It means smoke, Ashanti. The Ashanti people, the Igbo people, right? If you look at the Negro land map, it's a whole bunch of Hebrew names, or not just the kingdom of Judah. If you look up the names, that's kind of in that same region all throughout over there in the Negro land area. Look up those names. Those names got Hebrew origins. All those names. So what did they do? They came together, they conspired, and they took us into slavery. But where did we read it first? Joel chapter 3 prophesied it before it even happened. He just told you who was a part of the Atlantic slave trade. The Arabs, the Africans, so-called Caucasian men. They came, they took us. That's why the Lord said, will you recompense me? But watch this. Keep reading.
Yea, and what have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coast of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? If you recompense me, swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own hand.
Because what did they do?
Because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried into your temples my goodly pleasant things. The children also of Judah and the children of Jerusalem Have ye sold into the Grecians?
And who's the Grecians? So-called Edomites today. So who did the Palestinians and the Africans sell to so-called white men? When? What part of history? Show me in history outside of Atlantic slave trade that happened. There's nowhere. There's nowhere. Show me. You can't show me that in history. You can't show me Africans and Arabs getting together selling Israelites to Greeks. Even if you want to say, well, that's actually talking about time. Show me in history when in 333 BC, when the actual Greeks were ruling, show me when the Africans and the Arabs sold Israelites to them. It's not, you're not going to find it. When did that happen? It only happened one time in history, one place in history. Where? Our slavery. So who is this talking about? This is talking about you. So the Africans, they got to pay. The real Africans, not our people that scattered over there still. The real Africans got to pay. The Palestinians got to pay. This is not just a hate group for the white man. It's a hate group for all the nations. It's a hate group for all the nations. They all got to pay. Why? Because they sold us. Come? All praises when the Lord come back, right? Open up for the Lord, man. Go ahead.
Man, well, yeah, all praise be to the Most High. That's everything. Do you have any questions? Good? I think we're good. You got anything you want to add?
No, that's beautiful.
Good? You got one? Go ahead, King.
When is the Passover?
I'll talk to you after flower.
We'll have our calendar. Our calendar will be coming out real soon. Did we
Next
already
week.
get it approved?
We did. Yeah, we
Oh, okay, calm. So our calendar next week, the calendar will be out for everybody that's online, because I know we had a couple of emails of people asking us when we going our feast days for the next year. We actually, I know we talked about it. We need to do a lesson.
Yeah, I'm gonna holler.
Okay, talk. All right, but other than that, yeah, the calendar will be coming out soon.
All right, well, shalom to everybody that's online. Appreciate you guys tapping in. Definitely like, subscribe, hit us in that email. We'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And we hope everybody on the Sabbath is over now. But hopefully everybody is peaceful in their journey. With that, I say shalom.
Wait, did you end it?